name is Matt Vijayan, owner of Home Care Assistance GTA and Waterloo. I'm super excited to announce that this month we are celebrating 10 years anniversary in GTA and 5 years anniversary in Waterloo as a senior care management organization. We offer care management consultation and home care services to seniors who are living with various medical conditions. We are going through a challenging time. I know all of us have faced in one way or other the brunt of COVID-19. While we continue to do our part to contain the spread of coronavirus, physical and social distancing causes senior adults feel more lonely and isolated, and often they require self-care, especially with the caregivers, the family caregivers. So I have the honor to introduce Dr. Nicole Didyk, Associate Professor of Medicine from McMaster University. Hello again. Dr. Didyk is passionate about geriatrics and education in aging. She has been a leader at the McMaster Michael G.D. Groot School of Medicine Satellite Campus in Waterloo region as an associate clinical professor. Just to give you a little bit of background of Dr. Didyk, Dr. Didyk completed her medical degree, internal medicine residency, and geriatric medicine fellowship at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. After practicing in Hamilton and briefly in Calgary, Alberta, Dr. Didyk has been a geriatrician in Kitchener-Waterloo since 2004. In 2018, she completed her master's in health professions education, also at McMaster. Her clinical practice includes caring for those who are aging through home visits, inpatient consultation, outreach to long-term care, and retirement homes, and a geriatric medically complex clinic. Dr. Didyk also has a website, an education website called thewrinkle.ca. Now that's thewrinkle.ca. And you can sign up for a newsletter, and also you can subscribe to her YouTube channel. Quite recently, Dr. Didyk has posted quite a few topics very relevant to what's going on today. And one of them is 3 things you need to know about self-care, especially useful for those family caregivers. The second one is how to optimize your aging immune system. And a third one I wanted to point out, is it time to take your mom out of her senior's home? Very relevant topic based on the flux of information that we are going through. So thank you, Dr. Didyk, for taking your time from your very busy schedule and providing us with some information. So I'd like to start off with, you know, why do people need to be concerned at this time, especially dealing with senior adults? And what are your general observations?
Yeah, so, you know, it's interesting. And I was listening to you kind of list off all the things that I do, you know, the home visits and things like that. And, you know, since COVID kind of broke, I'm still doing almost all of those things, but I'm doing them virtually. So that's been a real blessing for me. And I hope it's been helpful for the adults that I've been working with, because, you know, it's allowing me to kind of see how this crisis is affecting older people and their care partners. So I've been able to do visits with people in long-term care, in retirement homes, and most of them are in their homes. And you're right, the isolation is a big thing. So I think people are faring better in their own homes, actually, because at least people who are living in their own home can move about their own personal space. They can go outside of their home into their yard if they have one, or their hallway, or, you know, so the people have a little bit more freedom. But I think we're really seeing that people who are living in retirement homes and long-term care homes are finding it very, very challenging. And some of that has to depend with their own health condition. So, for example, if someone's living with dementia and has changes in short-term memory and and ability to kind of understand what the conditions are and why it's important to stay in, that's becoming really challenging. So a lot of people are thinking about if they, if they have an older adult family member who's living in a senior's home, should they take the person out of the home and bring them home to live with them or to live somewhere else? So that's definitely a question that I'm getting. And the answers are very individualized. There's no right thing for anybody, but I think it's really important that people sort of take stock of what their needs are. And I'm seeing people really get creative with how to meet those needs in the midst of this pandemic. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Dr. Didyk. This is one big question for a lot of adult children who are really concerned
Mm-hmm.
about their parents and what needs to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
what kinds of care which is available right now? What are the options available right now for adult children or even for seniors who are looking for that transition?
Mm-hmm. So I think, there's levels and layers of care, right? So I know the homes, in retirement, let's just stick with people in retirement homes. So in retirement homes, I think that they're trying to do their best. And retirement homes are, a term that we kind of use regionally, but it could be assisted living facility or sister's home might be terms that other people, might understand. So those are places where usually a lot of older adults living together, and there's congregate meals and usually social activities and recreational activities and various levels of personal care help too. So the homes are trying to do their best with the staff that they have. Some homes are allowing staff from other agencies to come in, some aren't. So some are trying to limit it so that they have kind of the same people from the same agency always coming back to that one home. Because they're trying to limit the number of people going between different homes. So that can be a challenge to get that professional private help in. But if that's available and it's possible to work with the seniors residents, then that's a great option because it helps to take some of the pressure off the staff at the residence and just to expand the circle of care for the older adults. The thing is that a lot of, we really can't underestimate the amount of care that families do, right? So, families, there are millions of unpaid caregivers, and they probably provide billions of dollars worth of care every year. Their unpaid family caregivers do so much, and if they can't go into a retirement residence, then we have to try to find another way. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it isn't. I know that family members are doing window visits, which is really wonderful. Some people are doing several times a day for their older family member, which is remarkable. Some places have banned window visits, but where they can still happen, I think they're amazing. So that's difficult. I find family members are still able to go to people's homes. Like if people are living in their own home, there's a lot of flexibility. I think because at your house you don't have sort of a manager or a director of wellness who has to follow certain regulations. I think I'm hearing from family members that they're making that judgment call for themselves, right? So they're balancing what's the risk of my relative living in isolation versus the risk of having me go in or having a professional go in, and using all the best precautions that they can so that professional only goes in when they're healthy, uses protective equipment if it's needed, if there's care that's in close proximity. So people are kind of in their own homes, there's more flexibility, but in assisted living facilities or skilled facilities, I think it's harder to have that flexibility.
Got it.
Yeah. Like, are you finding that too when you have people that are seeking help and looking? I think people are looking more and more for private help because they can't go and do it. Do you find that there are sort of rules and regulations that are making it challenging?
That's correct, Dr. Didyk. I think you mentioned a lot of that in your statement. one of the things we have observed is that people coming from a hospital, they are often put in isolation for 14 days. And some of the
Yes.
family members are not allowed to get in. And that's where we are being called in because we follow those safety protocols, ensuring that there's one caregiver going in for one client, which is not necessarily true in many instances. So that gives a lot of confidence and peace of mind for the family members that someone is going in who's following the protocol, and with those PPE requirements that's been already provided either by the residential facilities or we are providing that. And also the fact that if you can provide some kind of a safety mechanism, a proactive mechanism that the caregivers can call in and report those symptoms that potentially could come in. Could be because of a common cold, or we never know, it could be a COVID-19 symptom. So we have we have a process in place for them to call in, and then they can actually go into the public health system to get things tested. But going back to the questions on why do you think people should be looking more at home versus a retirement facility at this stage? And generally speaking, we talk about aging at home. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I think people move into long-term care homes and skilled nursing facilities and nursing homes and that for a lot of different reasons. But I think in my practice, for sure, almost everybody prefers to stay in their own home, whatever that looks like. Whether it's the home that they raised their family in, or it's condo or an apartment or living with other family. Everybody kind of would prefer almost universally to stay in their own place. And so I think that that's good. That's one thing that's been a bit of a silver lining in the COVID crisis, is that I think it's made people think more about those preferences and what they, what price they would pay to stay at home, or what trade-offs they'd be willing to accept to stay at home, because there's trade-offs in every situation. So I think when people kind of get a better understanding of what are some of the benefits and what are some of the risks, right? So every situation has benefits and risks. The benefit of being at home is it's a familiar environment. It can be a lot more supportive to the aging brain to be in a familiar place. Moving to a retirement home or nursing home, it can become familiar in time, but most of the time people at home have the familiar smells and sounds and objects that can be so reassuring. So that's one thing when it comes to someone who's living with dementia, especially. Staying at home is preferable. And again, too, I think people, I think in my experience too, there's been more flexibility too, when people are in their own home. So they can go out to a program, and some people go out to recreational programs 5 days a week, but they still live at home, so that they can kind of have the best of both worlds.
That's right.
It's almost always cheaper. Like, actually, I find it can be a real barrier. The cost of moving into a senior's home can be prohibitive for many. So a lot of people, their preference kind of aligns with their means too. So if somebody can't afford a retirement home, they'll use some of those creative strategies to stay at home. And it's also amazing what when I was talking before, the informal caregivers, it's not just family members. Like, it can be amazing how the community can rally around somebody and bring meals and do wellness checks and drive people to appointments and pick up groceries. Like, it can actually be remarkable what communities can do. So I think for all of those reasons, a lot of people, or most people, really prefer to stay in their own home as long as they can. And sometimes it's not feasible, but that's in my experience, that's everybody's expressed preference for sure.
And I completely concur with that. It's individual preference. We service a lot of retirement homes, assisted living, and long-term care in Kitchener-Waterloo and GTA area. And we noticed that people are looking for sometimes social stimulation, and they want to be with like-minded individuals and be part of that bigger community. And they could prefer, to go into a more of a residential scenario. But let's say, for example, if someone decides to go with a home care, and what should a family look for when hiring someone to come in?
Yeah. Well, I think that's about the fit, really, like, and I think that's kind of, we're lucky in our area. And this is probably true of many places. So, I live in Kitchener-Waterloo. It's a catchment area of about 500,000 people. So it's, sort of an urban, suburban type of region. There are some outlying smaller communities, but, there's a lot of choice. So some people want, and it also depends on your needs too. So I think having a good inventory of what the person's needs are. Is it mostly social, mental stimulation and companionship? Is it more personal care? So is it more hands-on care?
Yep.
Or is there actual medical things that need to be done, like managing a feeding tube or managing some other type of treatment? Some people might even need a nursing visit, or other professionals. So I think when people are looking for help, it should be about the fit of what type of, what an agency can offer. Do they have the range of professionals that your family member needs? And it's also good to, I think, ask things like, will it be the same person all the time or most of the time, right? I think that's something too that I hear, is that the relationship building is really important, and that happens best when there can be consistency. And then sometimes too, there are particular things like, a male caregiver is a better fit, or a female, or someone who speaks the same language as the person, or has some type of common ground. That can also be very helpful. And I mean, just practical things, right? Things that people might not think about. So what happens if your regular person isn't available? What if they get COVID and they can't come in?
Yes.
What's your recourse? And the other thing I find that is really helpful for people is knowing just knowing who to call, like making it effortless, so that people kind of know the one number that they can call if something goes wrong, or, if they have trouble. Because that's the other thing that I think people need, in addition to the practical help, they kind of need help with system navigation a little bit. Which can be as simple as knowing who to call when you notice something,
Right. Yeah.
But I find the agencies that really seem to be the most successful at meeting the client's needs are the ones where there's a good knowledge of the local resources, and the agency sort of has the ability to integrate with the other resources and just give that navigation piece, helping families to take the pressure off, right? And not have everything to worry about, and be able to delegate some of that to someone else who's on their team. Yeah.
That's an important
point. What do you think? Would you add anything to that? Like, I'm sure there's lots of practical details that I don't even think of.
I think, Dr. Didyk, you touched upon some of the most important aspects of home care. There are various companies in Canada and also in the United States who offer great caregivers, but I think very few companies are offering a good care management process, which is more holistic in nature, where they are looking at every single component of the caregiving aspect. So it's not just about the activities of daily living or instrumental activities of daily living. I'm sure you'll agree it goes beyond that. Restoring the independence is one. However, there's also the aspect of restoring the purpose of living, and which is very important in people living with some of the most debilitating conditions like dementia.
That's very true.
Yeah, and I think you touched upon the fit. It's such an important aspect. You know, we have serviced over
Mm-hmm.
8,000 clients, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
learning we have had is that if the fit is not right, none of these matter because there's always this constant
Mm-hmm.
battle of what works for mom or dad. So one of the questions which comes
Mm-hmm.
to my mind as we go through this is that there's always this question: when is the right time for help? There's a family member involved,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of a loved one, and we have heard about the caregiver burnout, all those things, and I'm sure you are experiencing this in and day out. But when is that time where they need to
Yeah.
seek out for any external help?
I think it's at diagnosis, to be honest. And, I mean, a large part of my practice is dementia. So I hate to keep going back to that. So, dementia, Alzheimer's being the most common type of dementia, but other things. But cognitive impairment can really be a complicating factor in it for a lot of older adults. So I think at time of diagnosis, it's important. Everybody that I diagnose, for example, with Alzheimer's, we refer to Alzheimer's Society, so that people can start connecting with peers who are on a journey and find out about resources that are out there in the community. So that might be getting into an exercise program. So I think it starts at diagnosis, is putting out those feelers, talking to other people who are maybe farther along, even in the journey, and hear what they did. And I think it's always better to go to get help earlier rather than later. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, my mom wouldn't want that," or, "Dad, those programs are too babyish. They wouldn't like it." But I think keep an open mind, because introducing that caregiver early will make it easier when there is a crisis, because it won't be like all of a sudden, you have to get used to someone coming in and you have to get used to who that person is and a new routine. If you're already in a routine of having the care partner, having the personal support worker or someone else coming in, it can be much more seamless when there's a challenge that comes up. So, I think the earlier the better in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
to just build your team and, get that person on board, and also to give the care partner respite along the way. Right? Like, you might not realize that you need a break until you get one.
True.
And you realize, okay, now I can go to my doctor's appointment that I've been putting off because I had to care for my family member, or gee, I can take a weekend away,
Mm-hmm.
because I've arranged respite. So I think a lot of people don't know they need help until they really, really needed it yesterday, So I would say at time of diagnosis, start finding out about the resources and talk to peers, and just keep an open mind, because help can come from unexpected places, and might be the intervention that you never thought would work can end up being kind of a lifesaver for your family.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, doctor. That's
Yeah.
very useful again. Now,
Mm-hmm.
for one of the questions that may be in top of the mind for many people is that what kind of medical visits that can happen in a home, or virtually?
Oh, yeah. So that's something I should have mentioned before about, when we were talking about how people are getting, help in their homes or retirement homes in the time of COVID. A lot can be done virtually. So a lot of people have really, and even in hospitals, people are kind of broadening their scope. And so chaplains and social workers are doing Skype visits or FaceTime visits or Zoom visits with family. So
Yeah.
that can happen for sure. There are a lot of recreational programs that have gone virtual. So I know our Alzheimer's Society is doing some class virtually, and I've heard that in other places. There are some tech apps. So I've heard from family members that some apps that are designed for kids, but can be useful. So they can be at a level that's not cognitively too challenging, and they're sort of full and positive. So those things can be used. And then medical visits can happen virtually. So like I say, I've done I did a visit in long-term care where there was a nurse who was kind of carrying her laptop around, and we could see people, and she could look things up and we could visit. I've even done video visits to people's homes. So I can't listen to people's heart or lungs. There is technology to do that, but I just don't have it in my setup. But yeah, you can, that can be done. So almost any kind of doctor visit can be done virtually. And for sure, a lot of the education and counseling and things like that I do, it, can be done almost as easily virtually as it can be in person. So anything that doesn't require that hands-on type of thing, like obviously things like wound care and, that needs to be done in person, but so many things can be done virtually. Or even just over the phone, right? If we don't have video, I'm doing a lot of phone visits too. And those I think are very effective.
My mom just had a consultation yesterday with an endocrinologist over the phone. It went really well.
Yeah.
So, so Dr. Didyk, I'm sure some of who are listening or who would be listening to this particular cast would be from Canada, but they could be people from the United States and other parts of the world. Is there any universal message that you'd like to send out for people who are listening in from or watching this from the United States as well? What are the differences or what are the similarities that you would describe when it comes to senior care at this time?
Well, I think the one message that we've all been trying to get across is that advanced care planning is really important. And that's kind of could be a frightening term for people, because a lot of people think of it as planning for their end of life, but it doesn't have to be. A lot of the things that we've talked about are decisions that, about where to live and what kind of help to have, is rooted in what are people's goals and what are people's values. And I think that's what advanced care planning is. So wherever you live, the more that you kind of think about what your values are and what trade-offs you would accept in order to honor those values. I think that it's important to do that. And there are a lot of online tools that cover advanced care planning, from, just planning where to live and sort of what, how you want your life to be, as well as how you want your end of life to be. So I think, and they're applicable all over different jurisdictions too. A lot of them are very, very universal, but it's mostly just thinking about what your values are, what your goals are, and then writing it down and telling your family about it. And so that when they're faced with these difficult decisions or changes to health, it'll give everybody some guidance about what to do next.
That's awesome.
To have some of those tough conversations. Yeah.
So one of the themes I hear from you is being proactive and thinking ahead. And, whether it's choosing where, a transition, whether it's staying at home or moving into a retirement home or even advanced planning. And these are all very, very important tips. And thank you so much, Dr. Didyk, for these useful tips. And I wanted to let everyone know, please go to thewrinkle.ca website. There's lots of great information. Dr. Didyk always diligently records and put in. I actually subscribe to her Facebook page as well. I actually subscribe to her YouTube as well to keep me updated on what's going on in the field of geriatrics. So thank you again, Dr. Didyk, and I wish you a wonderful week and day ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for all the work that you're doing and your team. It's so, so needed right now. I really you are the heroes.
Thank you, Doctor. You as well.
Thanks.